All right. So, hello, I'm John Martino, CEO of Ricavvo, and author of ARMBAR, the Leverage Blueprint for Sales Mastery. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy day to join me today. I'm excited to share how to create leverage in sales cycles today, something that I've been working on for most of my career. I think it's a bedrock of sales success, and it's something that is overlooked by a lot of sales leaders. In my career, spanning nearly 2 decades in tech, I've worked at huge companies like Oracle, Salesforce, SAP, HPE. I've worked at some startups. I've learned a lot of lessons, but it's also my other passion. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well. That really crystallized the concept of leverage for me in sales. So I kind of combined my two passions. One is sales, one is Jiu-Jitsu, and really went after the whole how to build leverage thing, right? Because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's all about using technique and leverage to control a situation to find the strategic advantage, as opposed to brute strength, right? The sport or the martial art was invented so someone small in stature could still be successful in a fight. So in sales, it's no different. We're not talking about aggressive, choking out your customers. That's not what we're doing here, right? It's not an aggressive thing. It's about building healthy strategic leverage that leads to win-win outcomes. Our goal in sales, in my mind, always is to build a partnership with your customer. You don't want a one and done customer. You don't want to burn them and walk away, right? That's not a good customer. That's not how it's done. You want to partner. You want to partner with them and become a trusted advisor, in my opinion. So, I think that if you do that, you'll hit your goals and exceed your goals if you really focus on the customer being a partner. So most companies, big and small, struggle with a robust sales methodology. I've been at a lot of companies. Some had none, some had too many, some switched throughout the year. It was pretty crazy. And the result, to me, was always inconsistency in forecasting, inconsistency in how deals are gone after, missed targets, and a lot of gut feelings guiding critical business decisions. Today, I'm going to show you how the ARMBAR methodology gives you the confidence and tools to become a sales superstar by systematically building and applying leverage. All right, so first, what is the ARMBAR philosophy, right? Because it is the foundation for this whole presentation on leverage. So what is it? It's not just an acronym. It's a way of thinking about every single interaction in a sales cycle. It rests on 3 core tenets, all designed to build your leverage as you go through a deal. Number 1, it's leverage. That's one of the major tenets. Number 2 is adaptability. And number 3 is strategic positioning. So let's unpack the first one, leverage itself. In sales, leverage isn't about power plays. It's about being in a position where your solution is so compelling, so uniquely suited to solve your customer's critical pain that they need you. They can't live without your product. Think back to being a kid. You wanted to stay up late. You had no leverage. But in sales, when you deeply understand the customer's needs and pain points, you can position your solution as a definitive cure. That ability to provide the solution that truly fixes their problems, that's your leverage. It also means identifying risks early. If you walk into a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu match blind to your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, or any sport or competition or anything you do, you're at a huge disadvantage. Similarly, in sales, if you don't identify the potential pitfalls in a deal, it becomes uncertain and volatile. And that's never a good thing, no matter what you're doing. Certainty is key to any endeavor, especially sales. Identifying these risks and having a plan to mitigate them is crucial for maintaining and increasing your leverage throughout the sales process. Next, we have adaptability. Adaptability is critical to maintaining leverage. It is one of the most important things. Sales cycles are rarely linear. Deals will die, they'll regain, their steam again. It's like a roller coaster. People will hang up on you. Customers break promises every day. Budgets will shift. anything can happen in a sales cycle. So if you're in sales, you know this. The salesperson who can adapt and react properly to these inevitable setbacks is the one who perseveres, to be honest. In anything you do, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, life, other sports, any hobby you have, you're going to find yourself in bad positions. Your opponent seemingly has all the leverage, the other side always has the leverage in your mind, right? But the person who can adapt quickly, pivot, and turn the tables is the one who comes out ahead. Sales is no different. You might lose a key contact mid-cycle or a budget gets slashed. But if you can pivot fast, you can adapt, you can keep the deal alive and retain your ability to influence the outcome. Finally, strategic positioning. This is all about how you frame and present your product or solution to make it stand out. How do you differentiate yourself from the competition? It's about articulating value, identifying the right targets, uncovering pain, engaging all decision makers, and ultimately positioning your product as the medicine. You want your product to be the indispensable solution to their pain, the only solution to their pain. When you do this flawlessly, you create an undeniable pull towards your offering, which again, it's a form of leverage. You're not just selling a product, you're always selling a solution. And a solution, unlike a product, pays for itself, making it a necessity. All right, so before we dive into specific ARMBAR framework, right, let's talk briefly about why this systematic approach to leverage is so vital for something often overlooked: forecast accuracy. Every CRM tool has a feel for deal probability, at least all the ones I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them. It gives you a weighted average for your pipeline often, right? So 100K deal at 20% gives you a weighted pipeline of 20K. But too often that probability is just a salesperson's gut feel, an educated guess at best. That number then rolls up through the layers of management, becoming more distorted along the way. Public companies, especially, rely on these figures to predict earnings for investors, right? So at the end of every earnings call, they predict what their revenue is going to be for that next quarter or the next year. If they miss that at the end of the quarter, or the end of the year, or they have to adjust it as the quarter goes on or the year goes on, their stock takes a major hit. If you have any investments in stock, you've seen this time and again. This is far too important a task to leave the chance, though. ARMBAR is designed to take a lot of the guesswork out of this. If the methodology is followed, salespeople will be able to more accurately forecast deal probabilities. Managers will also be able to inspect deals using the principles of ARMBAR and forecast up to each level of management. Accuracy is king, and it's a direct result of how well you've understood and built leverage within each deal. When you know why a deal is moving forward, you can forecast it with confidence. I take pride in my early forecast abilities. In fact, one of my mentors used to give an award for closest to the pin at the end of each quarter. Let me explain what that meant. During our QBR, so I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you have, if you're in sales or you've heard of it, quarterly business review, you get together and you present your plan for the quarter. If it's the beginning of the year, you present your plan for the year. You always have to give your forecast. So, especially at the beginning of the year, you don't know your forecast. You're totally taking a stab in the dark sometimes. But that's not always true. You can figure it out. So I give my forecast for closest to the pin. You give your forecast at the beginning of the quarter or year, and then at the end of the quarter or year, he would compare that to actually how you ended up. And the person whose early forecast was closest to how they ended up would win the award. While I won a few times, I realized there had to be a better way than just gut feel. Because let's be honest, a lot of it was my gut. Like, I think I'm going to get to 1 million this quarter, right? I had some science behind it, but not much, to be honest. But by creating ARMBAR, I took a lot of the guesswork out of the deal probability, creating a repeatable process that generates the data points needed for accuracy and ultimately more predictable leverage. Again, predictability is huge. It's an underlying theme. I'd say leverage is one and predictability is 1A in my world, right? You want it to be predictable. You don't want chaos in sales. All right, so I'm going to introduce you to the ARMBAR framework. Okay, so what is the ARMBAR framework? As I mentioned, it's an acronym. It stands for authority, requirement, moment, budget, approach, and risks. These 6 crucial elements are what you need to define to fully qualify a deal, and most importantly, to gain and apply leverage. This isn't a linear process where you tick off A, then R, then M. No, it's dynamic. You're constantly working on all these letters at all times, in no particular order, adapting as the situation shifts. So one day you might be working on moment, right? You might be working on the timing of the deal. You know, that next day or even the same day, you're working on risk, then you're up to authority. So sometimes you're working on all of them at once. So you're not going through, it's not a checklist, you're not going through it, but you are checking off each one as you go, in any order that you go in. So the more you qualify each of the areas, the more leverage you gain throughout the deal cycle. It's more than just filling out CRM fields. It's about understanding the deep mechanics of your deal. Just like you can't make a cake without all the ingredients, you can't truly control a sales process without understanding all these components. ARMBAR also helps you qualify deals out, which is just as important. You only have so many hours, and you need to invest your time where it will maximize your return on investment. Holding on to a deal that isn't going to work is like, you know, it's a waste of your time. You only have so many hours. Work on things that are worth working on. So you risk losing a dominant position in your patch and wasting energy. You need to move on to the next one, or in this case, find a deal that's worth your time. That's just as important. You talk a lot about qualifying, and most of the time people think about qualifying in, right? In other words, let's qualify this deal. But again, qualifying deals out is so important. It is just as important, because you might have a patch. If you're an SMB patch, you could have 1,000 accounts, or you might have one account in a large enterprise patch. But either way, if you have a large account, like, you know, I covered GE in the past, and GE's like a conglomeration of a bunch of companies, right? So you got to decide which companies are worth working on and which aren't, no matter what your patch is. All right. So now that I've kind of touched on ARMBAR, we'll go into a little more detail on it. Let's start with the A in ARMBAR, authority. This is a who's who of your deal. This is not just about identifying a decision maker, but all of the approvers, the influencers, and anybody that has a say in the deal. And you have to understand their individual motivations. Without this, you'll never gain leverage. You need to know who these people are, especially approvers. It's usually more than one person, especially in the enterprise space. If you're at a really small company, it might just be the CEO, right? It might just be the owner, whoever it is. But as you go up in your sales career or go up in size of your targets, there's going to be a lot of approvers. Each one will have a slightly different pain point they're looking to solve. The CFO might care about budgetary issues, right? He's looking at the numbers. The CIO must make sure it integrates into their systems. The CRO is looking for sales team efficiency and making dollars. Let's just be honest, right? You need to get in front of all these approvers early and often, constantly qualifying them. Make sure that when the time comes, they will approve. I've seen countless deals die or get pushed because reps didn't know who all the approvers were. I learned this lesson the hard way, honestly, early in my career. I should have known better, but I was dealing with the company in London. I was living in New Jersey at the time, so I was flying across the pond pretty often. It was the last month of the fiscal year, and I was in accelerators. Anybody in sales knows that's when you make your money, right? I was having a great year. This deal was big. It was going to change my life. It would have been an enormous payday in my young career. It'd be an enormous payday any point in my career, to be honest. I was counting on it, right? So I flew over to London towards the end of the quarter here. It was last month, right? It was December, because it was a December close. Early December, I flew over. I met with the only 2 approvers, or so I thought. I left believing they both said yes. I left believing I only needed to deliver them final ordering documents, get signature, then you know, I got paid. I was counting my money. I was deciding what I was doing with that money. Little did I know, they never signed. With 2 days left to go, I still didn't have signed docs. I reached out to the CEO in London and said, hey, did you get my docs? Now, this is before DocuSign or eSig or anything like that. We either had to fax or scan and send, right? So you didn't really know if they got it. At least in DocuSign, you can see if they open it, or some of the other similar document management tools that are out now. It makes things a little easier. You know if they got it at least, right? Usually. So I didn't know. And I was just, so I waited, because what if it got bounced? What if the attachment was too big? All these things happened back then. So he goes, yeah, we got it. But I'm waiting for approval from my boss in New York. What? Wait, what? I was shocked. I said, what do you mean your boss in New York? Well, it turns out they were owned by another company, and the parent company made all the final decisions. The deal never ended up getting signed. Now, in my defense, this was prior to, all the tools we have now to look up companies. There was no Crunchbase. LinkedIn was in its infancy. I think I had a Dun & Bradstreet subscription, but only for contacts, so I couldn't see the company data. But the key was still my mistake no matter what. Here's why. So when I asked CEO, I said, why did you never tell me this? He told me, well, I assume you knew. I figured you knew who our parent company was. He should have assumed that because I should have known. Really important lesson here. If you don't ask, the customer isn't going to tell you. While it might be a super important deal for you, for them, it's a spend. It's perhaps very low on their agenda, depending on who you're dealing with. The person you're negotiating with might not be the person that's going to utilize the tool. They might have 10 other things to negotiate at the plate. You don't know. So again, simple questions would help me realize that I had to speak to New York. I could have driven to New York, been there very quickly, and met with these guys. Maybe I could have swayed them, or at least qualified the deal out sooner, saving myself from not delivering on a committed deal. That is never a fun call to make. When you have to call your boss, you end up and say, hey, remember that 7-figure deal I had forecasted? Yeah, it's not happening. I had it at 80%. Yeah, I was wrong because I didn't ask the question. That still stings me to this day. I remember that deal vividly. I remember the steakhouse we were in London when I got excited thinking these guys are going to sign this. I remember so much about it, and it sticks with me. And this is going back a very long time. Now, a better story is the biggest deal I ever closed, right? Huge deal, absolutely enormous. I came into a new role. During the interview process, I was told that there was a big deal that was going to be signed the day before I started. I came on board and I was told that it didn't sign. Shocker. I did my due diligence on the deal, learned everything I could, and asked questions of my team. So I went to the AE and I said, hey, why didn't it close? The answer was, I don't know. Okay. Who had to approve the deal, I asked. I said, well, I assume the CTO, that's who we were dealing with. Now, this was a monster deal. And I said, well, don't you think the CEO would have to be involved in any deal like this size? It's a publicly traded company. A huge deal is not going through this company, at least with the CEO, probably others too. But let's focus on the CEO for a second, who's a very strong personality. They said, well, he knows about it, but we didn't meet with him about it because he wasn't dealing with it. He gave us the CTO. That was my red flag. I immediately scheduled a meeting with the CEO. I went to their office, and after 2 hours with him, we resurrected the deal. I found out it didn't close, which nobody knew. We didn't solve his pain. And not only his pain, another approver's pain really was the issue. The approval chain was 2 steps. It was the CEO and the board of directors. That's it, right? Nobody else had a say. That CTO had influence, no say in the deal. And out of, I think I don't remember if there's 5 or 7 more board members on the board, but either way, only one board member vetoed it. And he had the right to. They had to be unit because of the size of the deal. They all had to be right, or the CEO wasn't going to do it. The board member had a very specific pain, and they left unaddressed because nobody knew about it. Now, getting to a board member is tough. They don't usually talk during deals, but the CEO knows what he has to do to please the board, right? So all we had to do is talk to the CEO. Anyway, at the end of the day, because of that meeting with the CEO, we found a way to address both. The approvals happened, and the deal was ultimately signed, right? So again, good salesmanship, creating leverage. Leverage is speaking to the right people a lot of times. That's it. Asking the right questions to those people. That's it. Right? So if the previous leader or rep had followed ARMBAR, This meeting with the CEO would have happened months prior, and the deal would have been closed long before I joined. Is this magical? No, but it's forgotten a lot. I've managed a lot of people. I've made my own mistakes, right? These things happen over and over and over again because people don't have a structure. They're not marching to the same beat. So again, understanding authority is paramount to building and maintaining leverage. Without understanding who you're selling to, you cannot create leverage in a deal. You can't close a deal, to be honest. So next up, let's talk about requirement. What is requirement? Some call it the compelling event. Some methodologies call it pain. They're all both good words, and I use them interchangeably with requirement. So again, it's the why. To me, it's really what it comes down to. It's the why. Why the customer needs to do this deal. Now, I said needs on purpose. You don't sell wants, you sell needs. So without a compelling event, you only have a want. And you can't forecast off a want. You'll have a lot of missed deals. You'll have a lot of missed numbers, and you won't be successful in your career. The key to requirement is truly getting to the why. Why would they sign this deal? This is where you uncover the deepest pain. And then you strategically position your solution to alleviate it, right? Like I said before, you are providing the only medicine that can cure their ills. That's what strategic positioning is all about. And that is the ultimate source of leverage. When you're giving them the only medicine that can cure their disease, you win. You have all the leverage, all the cards come into your hand. All right. So how do we go about this, right? First and foremost, you need to understand what they're currently doing. What are they currently using to solve this need or this pain? Even if it's just spreadsheets or an outdated system, right? A lot of companies using spreadsheets for ERP, for CRM, for everything when they start out because they don't have the money for licenses, nor do they want to spend it, especially if they're bootstrapping, right? So they might be using not even a competitor's product. They might just be, writing it down. So first find out what are they currently doing to solve this need? Because that's first what you're selling against. You have to show that your product's better than that at least before you even deal with competitors. Right? Then you find the pain inherent in their current state. What do I mean? You find why are they even talking to you? Why are they looking for a new solution? There's got to be a reason. If it was working, they wouldn't be talking to you. They're not going to spend money, right? So you find that inherent pain and you sell around that. And you build your business case around that. And you create your leverage around that. There's usually a key person responsible for delivering on the requirement, right? So maybe, I don't know, maybe the VP of HR for an applicant tracking system, or maybe it's the controller for a financial solution or whatever, right? Different people, there's usually one person that's responsible, and they usually have a team of other people helping them, depending on the company size. And then there's someone else who declared it. What I mean by that is the person who said, hey, you need to get this done. So really, there's two players that you have to deal with when it comes to requirement. You got to make sure the requirement, and then it's the team of people around them too. And again, you don't ever want to be multi-threaded. I'm sorry, single-threaded. You want to be multi-threaded. But again, there's usually one person that's in charge of delivering and one person that declared it. Sometimes they're the same person, depending on the company size. But again, as long as you know all the players, you ensure you cover all your bases. Without this, your sales cycle is just a game of drunk darts, right? You're just throwing darts and you don't know where they're going. It could be in someone's eye. You don't know. It could be on the floor, in the wall. You're probably not hitting the bullseye. Maybe once in a while you're hitting the bullseye because you get lucky. And that's happened to a lot of sales reps, and then they get cocky. I know about that. So a crucial part of requirement is understanding the monetary value attached to it, right? What is the financial cost to them of keeping the status quo versus implementing your solution? This is where the real leverage is built when it comes to requirement. Does your solution cut down on costs? Does it reduce man hours? Because at the end of the day, a company has to be profitable. At the end of the day, everything comes down to money in some regard. Maybe it's not just the cost of your product. Maybe it's the residual cost by mistakes by, different things. I'm going to tell you a story about that in a little bit, about a company it was residual cost. Really, it wasn't the cost of the product. It was what was caused by the lack thereof a process. So you find a way to reduce this cost, you have a winner. That's leverage. This isn't always easy. It isn't always easy to find out directly, right? Because money, people hold that tight. They don't want to share that. So I have a powerful technique I use to get this information called hypothesis selling. I say in my book, I don't know if I coined this phrase. I haven't heard it other places. I might have coined it. I might not have. I'm not claiming it, but I use it. So if somebody else coined it, thank you. I don't remember who you are. I just remember using it. Hypothesis selling is a strategy for when a critical piece of information is elusive, usually around money, other things too. Sometimes companies simply choose not to share, or even genuinely don't know the answer, often due to a perceived loss of leverage if you reveal too much. So in other words, they think they're holding leverage by not telling you anything. In reality, this is why you want to build a partnership. The more information you both have, the better you can solve each other's needs. I try and convince customers all the time. Every customer is different though. The ones who really get the best deals understand that, but most aren't going to share it. So the brilliant thing about this tactic of hypothesis selling is you come up with your own hypothesis, your best educated guess about a situation or a cost, and you share it with your customer. The brilliant part comes when the customer wants to prove you wrong, because you're going to be wrong. There is no way it is drunk darts. You're guessing how much they're paying people. You're guessing how much they're spending on something, but you want to be wrong, and being wrong is okay. If you get it right, great. You're psychic. But it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. The huge advantage is they will undoubtedly correct you if you're wrong. And that gives you the exact information you need. Human nature says that you want to prove somebody wrong. I don't care who you are. You can say you don't do it, you do. Everybody does it. So imagine you're trying to sell project planning software. The target company is currently using spreadsheets, and a team of people is doing the data entry, right? So in this scenario, it's one of those spreadsheet situations. But it's time I'm going to explain to you what hypothesis selling is. Your software costs $100,000 per year. We're going to keep round numbers. It's a managed service, so it's all in 100,000. I don't want to make things difficult for myself. So you have no idea how much they're currently spending on this process that you're trying to replace. You just don't, right? You know how much your product costs, but you don't know what you're replacing. It could cost them 50 grand. You don't know. So in this case, you would come up with two hypotheses, or I would. First, you hypothesize that it takes a team of 4 people to just manage and report on the spreadsheet data. The reason I would say that, it's time consuming for people to gather data, enter it in the spreadsheets and load it into the reporting tool. It's a lot. So they probably have 4 people doing it, right? And let's just say that each person makes $70K a year, all in, minus other things like computer and electricity and business running, right? That you would put on that. So they're spending over $280K a year, 70 times 4, right? But it's over that because there's other expenses a business has that we're not accounting for. So this is just on the employees required to use and maintain these spreadsheets in the process they're currently using. The second hypothesis is that you could add is to estimate how much human error costs the company. Let's just take one category. Let's say that every day the project is late, the company gets fined. That happens, especially in a regulated industry or government type situation. Construction, there's a lot of different ones that happens in. These fines cost the company, let's just say $50,000 per year. So when you run benchmarks running your product show that it would cut down on project overruns by more than 50% due to eliminating human error and having advanced predictive capabilities to better predict the project completion date. So your product would save them another $25K if your hypothesis is correct, right? So you're assuming that they're getting hit with $50,000 in fines. You're assuming that your product's going to cut that down in half based on true benchmarks. So you have that at $25K. So after presenting this hypothesis in an easy to just digest manner, I would put together a slide deck and walk them through it, right? So you come out with the fact that they're spending $330K a year on salaries and fines. Your tool would require one person to manage the data entry. which cuts that down, and you would save them at least $210,000 per year. Add in the $25K per year in savings on fines, and your tool would save about $235K per year. Your tool costed $100,000, so you subtract 235 minus 100, and you get $135,000 in savings. Never mind efficiency, right? You just showed the customer how your tool not only solves their problem of inaccurate project timelines, but also saves them $135K per year. So once you get done, you're all excited, you nailed it. What happens? Somebody on their side will correct you. Like I said, people love doing this. No, we have 3 people managing spreadsheets, and they only cost us $60 per year. You're wrong. I'm wrong, but I got you. That's how I look at it. So now you know they're spending $180K per year on the required personnel. And then they say, but we do get fined a little more. We get, fined $60K per year. That brings the fines up by 10, right? So the net result is you're going to save them $155K per year. They're going to have a lot of trouble walking away from that now that you have accurate numbers to put in your business case. They feel good about correcting you, but you just got what you need from them, and they don't even know it. They also now appreciate more than just the technical value of your tool. They appreciate your tool for its monetary value as well. So that's how you manufacture pain. That was an example. There's a lot of ways to do it. But that's how you uncover the true requirement and build significant financial leverage. And I think financial leverage is a lot of times the best kind of leverage you can have. You just created a need that is going to be very hard for them to ignore. Could this backfire on you? Yeah. You could show that your tool's going to cost money. Then you got to sell. That's okay. Or you're probably going to lose the deal anyway. Let's just be honest. Nobody's going to pay for a new tool that's going to cost them more. That's not going to be more efficient, right? It's just not possible. So either way, maybe you win, maybe you qualify it out. But you want to be strategic with it. You want to kind of have a good, you're not guessing here who to attack with this. All right, let's get on to moment and budget. I want to combine the M and the B as they're often intertwined in creating leverage. Moment's your close date, right? Timing. But more deeply, it's understanding when the deal will realistically close and why. That's the key. Why? It's not just what's on the calendar. It's the compelling event behind the date. Is there a regulatory deadline? Is there a budget cycle? A board meeting? If there's no clear why, then that date is a guess and it's garbage. Guesses don't hold up under pressure. Your ability to get this precise gives you immense leverage over the deal's timeline. You need to uncover what could cause a deal to slip and address those risks early. Excuse me. This is where your close plan comes in. Close plans are very important. How you do it, we could argue. There's a lot of ways to do a close plan. As long as you do a close plan that's detailed, do a detailed timeline, map out every step needed, the style's yours. You have a game plan, you anticipate, and you adjust. That is the point of a closed plan. Be flexible, right? Adaptability, like we talked about. So you share that close plan with your customer. A lot of reps don't do this, and I think it's a mistake. You get them to commit to it, period, the end. Now you have a timeline built. If something slips, you can use it to hold them accountable. But you'll also see it early and you can adjust your forecast. This proactive approach gives you leverage over the timeline itself. A deal without secured budget is a deal at extreme risk, right? So now we're going to go into budget. That's important. It's all about confirming whether the customer truly has the financial resources for the deal. And it's not just, do you have the money? It's, do you have the money and is it allocated? Is it approved? Who needs to approve? Does it need board review? Find out everything you need to know about it. What will get that money into your hands once a deal's signed? You got to understand that. Big companies, it might be a very long process. Some companies say we have to issue a PO and then we can't issue a PO for 30 days and then we can't pay for, right? Your contract's going to say something about payment timing. It's a sticking point a lot of times in contract negotiations. So the more you understand about the budget up front, the better off you are to nip all those things in the bud. You need specifics. How do they plan to fund it? Is it existing budget? Is it new funds? Who approves? When? Why? How? Budgets tie to fiscal cycles. What kind of fiscal cycles depend on the company? Some companies do yearly budgets. Some do quarterly. Some do approval-only budgets. Some people give, a budget to a certain level of person, whether it's a RVP, EVP, depending on the company. Some don't give it to anybody. You have to go to the CFO and ask for it. But there is a budget, or you need to find a budget. If there's not a budget, you're delaying closing. I've watched deals collapse because the customer lost their budget. Maybe the year end, right? And you didn't get your deal done. And now the budget's gone for next year. Calling your manager to tell them your deal died because of something like that is so painful. Oh yeah, the budget's gone. What do you mean the budget's gone? Not fun. Understanding these mechanics gives you leverage by knowing exactly where the financial pressure points are. Also, consider competition for the budget. Even if funds exist, other projects take priority sometimes. Sometimes emergencies happen. Get a data breach, they got to put their money there. I mean, anything can happen. So the more you can understand them and what they're spending on, is your solution a priority? If not, how do you make it a priority, right? That ties back to requirement. A strong financially qualified deal elevates your deal's importance, right? Making your solution the one that must be funded. And on your side, does the budget match the pricing? If there's a gap, address it transparently. Lay out the value clearly, tied to their goals. And sometimes they're going to fight for the budget you need for them, or they need for you, for your product. That's true leverage. When they become your advocate and they fight for funding, you really got them. They're really a partner. You don't got them in the sense like pull one over on them. They're your partner. You're working together to get this done. That's the key. Never assume the budget is there until you have proof. And sometimes that's not good enough either, because like I said, emergencies happen, but hey, you do your best, you find out as much as you can, you cover all your bases, and when an emergency does happen, you have to call your boss, he knows you did everything you could. Get the budget nailed down, and you're one step closer to closing the deal, firmly in control of the financial leverage. All right. Let's go on to the last two letters of ARMBAR. Again, we're going through ARMBAR, but I'm showing you where the leverage comes from each one. The entire methodology is built on leverage. That's why it's called ARMBAR. I could have named it a lot of things. It's just an acronym, right? I could change the budget to money, so M, F for funds. I mean, there's so much. D for dollars. So the second A in ARMBAR is one that's often overlooked. The last two are actually often overlooked, but I think this one's the most overlooked, in my opinion. It's your roadmap for the deal. It's understanding everything else about the deal. Because those things, and we'll get into it, these things really could change the course of your deal. You understand the deal type, customer's procurement process, how they handle POs, how their legal process works, anything else ancillary to your deal that's not directly in your deal, but it's going to affect your deal, right? That's where you're looking at an approach. Without a clear approach, you're flying blind. And that can lead to nasty surprises late in the game, completely eroding your leverage. So first, what kind of deal is it, right? I've worked at companies where we sold software and services, hardware. Sometimes I worked at companies back in the day where it was on-prem and cloud, two totally different business units. I mean, there's all different things. So let's look at software and services, which is pretty common, that go together. If you're selling both of them, each of them have their complexities. They're different. For example, selling software versus services often requires different strategies. Services might involve third-party vendors, which need to be on approved lists. Products might require technical validations or compliance checks, right? They're different. You need to identify the deal type early and adjust your strategy. That's why this approach is here. It's like knowing if you're, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu example, are you in a BJJ tournament or are you in a fight, street fight? The rules are very different. You're selling services or software. Rules are very different, and your tactics have to be different. The rules change, your tactics change with them. Knowing these rules gives you leverage to navigate these changes. Procurement. I hate procurement. I'm not going to lie. Any salesperson does. This is where deals go to die if you're not careful. Procurement teams can be your best friend or your absolute worst enemy. And not because they're bad people. They have a job to do. They're protecting the company's wallet and other things, right? So what I always do, and you should too, in my opinion, is introduce yourself early. Ask for a meeting with procurement and come prepared. Ask questions. How do they evaluate? What are their timelines? Do they renegotiate terms last minute? You don't ask that exactly, but you want to find that out about them, right? That's all their timeline. How are they going to negotiate? I once had a deal locked in, only to have procurement reopen negotiations on pricing and terms the day it was supposed to close. Guess what? It didn't close on time. And guess what? This is the first time I ever talked to procurement was when it got passed to them. I never tried to proactively talk to them. It cost me weeks and cost me a margin and cost me money. If I engaged them sooner, I could have avoided that scramble. You cannot avoid procurement. You cannot ignore procurement. You have to address it or they will win. And you don't have a win-win. You can make a procurement person your partner too, if done right. Make them a champion for you. You'll make some money. Understanding their process gives you leverage by allowing you to proactively manage their expectation and requirements. Another beast is legal. I don't like them either as a salesperson. Guess what? I was an attorney for Oracle at the start of my career. That's how I got into tech. I was the contract attorney. I was the one that everybody hates on the sales side. Then I switched to sales, right? But both sides have lawyers, and they're important. I'm not talking smack. I have my law degree. I have my bar in New Jersey in retired status. I should say that, not the bar. I do have the bar. I did pass the bar. But both sides have lawyers, and the dynamics differ. Simple. Inside counsel, so companies, actual lawyers, they usually know the business and they work on salary and they have a task to do. They're going to get it done as fast as they can. They probably have 20 more behind it. Trust me, they're most overworked and it's the most thankless job in a big company, in an office setting sometimes. Now, some companies hire outside counsel. They hire law firms to represent their interests because they don't have inside counsel, especially smaller companies. Or companies that are in something they don't know well. Right? When I was in ISV OEM partner sales, I would deal with outside counsel a lot because their lawyers didn't know it. Partnerships, right? Other software companies, if they weren't doing these kind of partnerships, they would get an expert to do it. They don't usually feel the same urgency outside counsel, right? A lot of times they're billing hourly. They're not looking to speed things up. They're looking to get what they want for their customer, they need for their customer, just like you are. So again, the key to this, just like procurement, is you want to get to them early. You want to push for direct lawyer-to-lawyer conversations even before they're involved. That is the best thing you can do. Build rapport between the two lawyers. Most lawyers won't talk to the rep without the lawyer on, without the other lawyer on. Depends on the lawyer. So get them to talk, at least. If you could be on it, great. If not, no big deal. Prep your lawyer with what you need, right? Because they're working for you. Not for you, but you're both working for the entity you're trying to sell the product for. I've seen deals stall and die because lawyers were trading in red lines instead of picking up the phone. Offer your standard agreement early so they can review it and come up with deal breakers, right? All right, let's jump to risk. We got about 15. Actually, we're out of time. I'm going to go a little long if anybody has to drop. you can drop, and I'll get the recording out. Apologize, but pretty passionate about this, and it's hard for me to just blow through it. I should have known better. All right, so the final, like I said, the final R in ARMBAR is risk. Again, a very overlooked piece, maybe less so than approach. Every deal has subtle reasons it might not close, right? And your job is to identify those reasons early. I rate them, and I try and mitigate them before they disrupt my forecast. Think of risk as hitting traps that are waiting to spring. If you don't spot them, they're going to spring, right? You're going to be caught off guard and you're done. So you start by asking yourself, what could go wrong, right? Are competitors stepping in? Is a key decision maker leaving? That happens. I like to list every possible risk, no matter how small. Then I rate them from 1 to 10. A 10 might mean, honestly, the deal's dead, right? I worked for Oracle. I was dealing with a Microsoft shop. Sometimes they weren't going to switch. No matter what product I had, they were not going to deal with it. You know, there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but a 10 is pretty severe. You can beat a 10 sometimes, but maybe you don't spend as much time on it. You got to make decisions here, like I said. So after identifying the risks, you develop a plan to address them. If a customer favors a competitor, right? Find the unique pain point your solution handles better. That's how you create leverage there. If a budget could shift, secure funds early. I've had deals where my champion left mid-cycle, forcing me to quickly find a new advocate. How did I create leverage for that? I always plan on that by getting a multi-threaded approach. I'm not just talking to one person. That's how I create leverage there. So it's like losing a grip, right? But you have to adapt swiftly or you risk losing the deal. Risks aren't static. New ones emerge constantly, but consistently qualifying and mitigating them, you gain immense leverage over the unexpected. All right. Use everything we're learning for leverage, and you apply it to one thing: final negotiation. And final negotiation can be throughout the whole process, right? Getting that yes is the key. All the things we discussed: authority, requirement, moment, budget, right? Approach, risk. Don't carry much weight if you can't negotiate it. If you fail the negotiation, you can't close. And if you can't close, you don't get paid. ARMBAR prepares you for negotiation because the sides that hold the card has the leverage, and they're usually the victor. If you followed ARMBAR, you've been gaining leverage all along the way. You haven't been gaining leverage to just store it away. What are you going to do with it? Use it to negotiate and get your deal. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when you apply the ARMBAR properly, the person has two choices. They either submit, tap, or snap, right? They hurt their arm. Not good. So that's what happens when you apply the leverage properly. You get a partner, you get an ongoing customer, you get your deal. It's no different in sales negotiation, right? Like I said, you get your partner. If you use the leverage you gained, then you should win. If you've applied the methodology correctly, you've received buy-in from all the authority figures. You've shown your solution is a requirement. You made it that medicine, the only medicine, right? You've nailed down the moment. You know when it's going to happen. You've confirmed the budget and the money's there. You understand their approach. You talk to procurement and legal. You mitigated all your risks. You should have all the leverage you need. The key is to have things in your back pocket to bargain with that cost you revenue. Maybe an extra year of subscription you give, right? You have something to give. That's the key. They're going to get their last pound. You know they are. Have something in your back pocket. Don't give it all away up front. You need to protect your revenue at all costs, though. So try and find something that is less money-wise and, a give you can give without costing anything. Also, and the most important piece in negotiating to me is the will to walk away. You need to have a bottom line. If they ask for more than that, say no. This is hard for any salesperson, really hard, but it's imperative. If you don't say no, the ask will never stop and the deal won't close. I've seen it so many times. If you have faith that you have the leverage, then they will need to buy your product because you've created that need. They won't be able to walk away. It's no different than anything you do, right? If someone needs something, they're going to find a way to get it. If you get the leverage right, you'll get them to buy it. You'll get your signature. So real quick question, story before we go into the end here. So I was working with ISVs, like I said early in my career. That means other software companies were using our products as part of their product. So I was selling database, and sometimes it was hard to unseat people. It's a very complex type of sale, right? But the way I built leverage was I would take, so say a company used a homegrown database. I would explain to them that, hey, you're focusing on a database as part of your product, which has nothing to do with your product. It's a part of it. It's one of the blocks of your product. Why do you have your developers working on that when you can buy mine and embed mine, when you can have them focusing on something else, which is a core functionality of your product? That's where you're making your money. I can create leverage that way, right? It's like a company making its own stereo, a car company like Ford. Ford isn't making their stereos, they're using Bose or whoever, right? So why distract from the core business? Always find a way to create leverage, no matter how complex your sale is. That is my point of that story. So ultimately, what I want to leave you with about leverage today is you're not trying to hurt your customer and make them submit, win. You absolutely must create leverage, though, to create a partnership. Treat them like a partner, because repeat customer, if they're a partner, they're going to be a repeat customer. They're the gift that keeps on giving all along. But without leverage, you won't be successful in doing that. You have to make them believe in their heart, as you do, that they can't live without your solution. And let me touch on that real quick. If you don't believe that, you need to get another job. If you don't believe that your product is great, and you don't believe in your product, they're going to smell it a mile away. You have to have conviction that you're selling the best thing out there. Use that conviction as leverage, right? Because that's the leverage that you can create. So a shameless product plug. I have a product, my company, called Leverage. If you don't want to learn the methodology, you want help building leverage, it's an AI-powered sales coach that will walk you through the whole process. It is a really powerful tool. It analyzes your opportunities across all the ARMBAR dimensions, identifies where you have leverage and where you need it, provides you risk mitigation plans. I mean, it does it all, guys. Think of it as having a deal expert strategist in your corner 24/7, helping you maximize leverage points to win more deals. Now, right now it's only for teams, but we're in the final throes of releasing our web version. So think like ChatGPT, you can access it from the web on a web page, and it's a chatbot. Similar, but more than that. Once the web version comes out, you'll get a free 2-week trial for signing up. Play with it. If you like it, you sign up for an account. If not, so be it. But I think it's the most powerful, magical tool I've ever seen. I could do a whole thing on that, which is not why I'm here. But I had to say that because if you are interested in what you learned today, that's one way to really, really execute it. And it's not very expensive. So, can you perfectly execute ARMBAR? Like anything you do, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, baseball, music, singing, it requires constant practice. Repetitions are crucial. So using a new methodology may feel different at first, but over time you will gain your style and stride. Or maybe you found parts of this that you like. Use them. I'm not saying that my methodology is the best. I didn't think it is for me. Might not be for you. But I am sure there's something you can get out of this today that you can use right away in your tool chest. Once you see your close rates improve, you'll be obsessed with it, right? So a thank you to everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We're not going to have time for questions. I went late. I apologize. Feel free to reach out to me. That's my links page. You can easily send a note through there. I'll get it to the website. It has all the links to the company on it if you want to check out more, my book, the website, the product, all kinds of things. You can schedule a call with me. There's a Calendly link in that link page. If you have more questions, I'm happy to talk, happy to be a mentor, whatever you guys need. If you're really, really interested in ARMBAR, book is available on Amazon now. ARMBAR, the leverage blueprint for sales mastery, but that link is also in that links page. I also do training sessions and the like, which you can get more information on too. So Ricavvo.com is the website. And I'm confident that applying these principles will help you become a true sales black belt as well. Happy selling. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.